We all know that thing ain't real. Thank you to our final patrons, Strawbones, Widow4765, Midnight Gemlord, Sean, and Artgoon. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron, Alex Ice Rose. Now, we have this breakdown, slash discussion on Diodra, the mysterious, not son, because I don't think he's real, child of Ironside. Please remember to leave your own thoughts on Deodra in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit that little notification bell to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. Explore as low as $1 a month. Thanks to videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the discussion. What's up, guys? Uncle Punks here, and here we are to talk about Diodra, the long-lost brother of Percival the Death, and the child of Ironside the Valiant. And it's interesting, right? Because, you know, it's kind of common, but not too common, for your main character to have some secret sibling, some long-lost brethren, a kin that we were not initially introduced to, nor that we know that existed. It's very, very common, so I'm not necessarily blown away by the fact that Percival has a brother. I'm more so intrigued that Percival has a brother, because the thing is, despite the trope being common, every single author seems to iterate on it in completely different ways. The main one that comes to mind is just Raditz and Dragon Ball, and the main way that Toriyama decided to iterate on that trope is that he, went away permanently, 5 episodes after he was introduced, and I think maybe 10 chapters at most. Bro was introduced and gone. So we know that hypothetically, brother characters don't have to be too important, but at the same time, we do have a certain criteria which does imply that brothers have to be important. In the previous series, that Four Knights is the sequel series to, and that is Seven Deadly Sins. Notably, the major sibling relationship is Eldris and Meliodas. There's other sibling relationships, like Zarathos and Dreyfus are siblings. Thetas are, and Bond had a little sister, and obviously King and Elaine are siblings, but specifically in terms of the Brotherhood, and I'm not talking about that Brotherhood, but in terms of the Brotherhood, the major one from the original series that was a main character and their sibling getting pretty much consistent spotlight ever since the sibling was introduced was Meliodas and Zeldris. So we have a precedent of Nakaba introducing siblings to main characters and them mattering a lot. Zeldris was the leader of the 10 Commandments, which were, for, I'd say, a solid, maybe, I was going to say a third, but maybe a little bit more than a third of the narrative, the main threat. And Zeldris led them. He was top dog, and while Esterosa was supposedly the brother of Meliodas, he was also pretty darn important. So Nakaba doesn't seem like the Toriyama. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would go out of his way to introduce such an interesting concept, only to bang, 2 arcs later, or within the same arc. So Diodra, I think, is going to be a character that sticks around a lot, and is going to be very integral to the narrative. But the question is how, and the question is why, and the question is when. Because here's the thing, right? From what little we know about Diodra, 1, he's the son of Ironside, 2, he's a brother of Percival, and 3, he can only exist in Camelot. This is just flat out established. Maybe he could exist outside the world, but it's heavily implied by what Ironside says to Diodra about never leaving Camelot, and what Diodra says about himself being fine as long as he's in Camelot. It appears to me, if I had to take a good look golly-ander, that Diodra is entirely reliant on Camelot to do the continued existence thing. And in the little flashback we get with Ironside when he first arrived to Camelot, Diodra was a silent, literally, not breathing kind of baby until he entered Camelot. So this already raises a massive question about Diodra. Is bro really there? Is he actually real? Is he truly an individual that can be physically interacted with? Is he one of the illusions and secrets of Camelot? Because the thing is, it is so strange that he can only exist in Camelot. What is it about Camelot? What is the special? What they got in the air there that for some reason he can only exist there? And even then, he's still physically weak. Notably, a big comparison or a big factor about Percy that we noticed from as soon as we met him is that the dude was physically adept. Bro was strong. Bro had gains at birth. You can see in some of the volume extras, he, when still a baby, managed to speed blitz Varghese and get on his arm without him noticing. So obviously, Percy's been about that life since he was fresh out. But Diodra, now presumably 16, we don't have an actual confirmed age for him, but he seems to be around the same age as our main cast. So 16-year-old Deodra he's struggling to run around us a little bit. And notably, I'm out of shape. Don't get me wrong. If I were to suddenly do a 100-meter dash right now, it would not look pretty. But even still, he doesn't seem like he's out of shape. He seems like he should be reasonably fine. His body constitution is just weak. So that's a big dichotomy between the two brothers here. One is extremely physically weak, while the other is physically cracked. But then the question becomes, why? Diodra is a character who so far is wrapped up in countless questions. That's the main thing we have with him. And one of the biggest questions is whether or not he's real. Like, legitimately, we aren't entirely sure. Mainly because not only does Ironside himself describe Camelot as a land of secrets and illusions, but also, like, after it was revealed that Merlin wasn't real, she was just a captive fairy that was transformed to look like Merlin, I have no idea what to trust in Camelot anymore. I'm not even sure Arthur's there. Like, legitimately, is that really Arthur? Is it really you, buddy, or is that chaos wearing your skin? So let me know. Is Ironside real? I think he has to be real. Ironside can leave the world, and he wasn't even a native to Camelot, which is crazy to think about. He was not a Camelot native, so Deodra isn't a Camelot native either, if Deodra is real. Because the thing is, if Deodra is so heavily reliant on Camelot, it's entirely possible that the reason he can't exist outside that world is because he doesn't exist. And thusly, the moment he would step foot, his foot would, like, disappear. Like, what's that? Remember, this is such a strange reference, but remember in The Last Wish, right, at the very end, when people went through the star barrier? Yeah, that would happen to Deodra the moment he tried to step foot outside of Camelot. Like, he would put his foot through the door, whatever you do to get out of Camelot, and his foot would just disappear because he's not real. He's probably in a very similar situation to the fake Lancelot that Jericho has. Like, there may have actually been a person. Like, straight up, there may have been a person that was turned into that Lancelot for Jericho, because we see Jericho can physically interact with him. And a big thing that Arthur mentions is that with illusions, you can't actually touch them. That's something that he admits, even with his chaos powers. You know, literally the reality warper says, yeah, my powers are cool and all, but if I just make an illusion, it's just that. It's an illusion. It's like a light construct. I can't touch it. It's worthless. However, we see Ironside and Jericho specifically interact with their quote-unquote illusions, which makes me want to believe that Deodra's real, right? Because he's able to be interacted with. But if he's able to be interacted with and that makes him real, why can't he leave? Is it just literally there's something special in that Camelot air? Like, does he literally just have to have that Camelot sauce in his veins 24/7, or else he'll just splat? I don't know. It's a weird 50-50. I could entirely see Deodra just being something made up by Arthur to get Ironside's loyalty, because Ironside, now that we know he's not a Camelot native, really has no reason to stick to Arthur unless Arthur keeps maintaining his son's life. If he does that, then, well, yeah, I don't think Ironside is much of a choice, because Arthur can literally just turn Deodra off. But as long as Ironside has Deodra, and Arthur has Deodra and Ironside, he's all good. So the real question is, how, if at all, is Deodra real, and how real is he? And was Deodra supposed to be Percival, or was Percival supposed to be Deodra? Because another major question that's up in the air, just due to Deodra's introduction and the vagueness around his existence, is just that. Like, when did he come into existence? Because Percival came into existence 16 years ago. So is Deodra older than Percival or something? Were him and Percival twins? I genuinely don't know. Because the thing is, it appears that Varghese and Ironside are not Camelot natives, meaning they weren't serving Arthur, but they were serving Arthur for long enough that Varghese can distinctly recognize that Arthur changed post the whole chaos incident, to put it lightly. So I don't know, the timeline's all screwy. Where does Deodra fit in here? Because I thought it was simple. I thought 16 years ago, Percival was born at the same time that Arthur got chaos. Arthur went a little bit cuckoo crazy for Cocoa Puffs, and then bada bing, bada boom, Varghese ran away with Percival. He's like, whoa, can't raise my grandson in this. But that would imply that Diodra would have to at least be like a couple months older, well, no more than a couple months, a 9-month gestation period for humans. So at least a year or something older than Percival, but he has to be many years older than Percival, presumably, because Ironside and Varghese seem to have been in Arthur's service for a minute before Varghese defected. At least if that one flashback way back when we first met Anne after the battle with Ironside is to be true. Varghese and Ironside were serving under Arthur for long enough that they can recognize a pre-chaos and a post-chaos Arthur. But Ironside wasn't actually there. Like, how much of not just Deodra himself, but how much of the memories around Deodra are real? Are we getting inaccurate information? Is it a similar thing to Mael/Estarossa all over again, where Arthur, with the depths of his chaos powers and his ability to clearly wield illusions, he's sort of just like faking memories, faking data? Because it's not like Nakaba hasn't pulled that on us before. Like, Nakaba has told us things that are just explicitly wrong. Like, remember, all of the Demon Clan stuff was essentially a lie in Season 1. Like, the whole context behind them, the Red Demon being powerful, the Grey Demon being a higher level, like, all of that was just wrong. That was information that Nakaba gave us early on in the series, and then just proceeded to say, ha, lied to you. So it's entirely possible that the flashbacks and context we get are off. Because Nakaba's just playing with us. And the thing is, Deodra could just be playing with us. Because notably, another thing that seems strange about Deodra is that he's like too perfect. Like, notably, I know there are just people who are good people. Like, there just are. I know 16-year-olds who are good people. Because they are. That's just how they're raised and all that good stuff. But, like, Deodra seems too good. Like, almost like he's so perfect that it's exactly what Ironside would have wanted out of a son in comparison to Percy. Don't it seem convenient that Deodra seems to perfectly obey every single order, do everything Ironside wants, and happens to be the cutest, most lovable child one could ever dream of? Almost like a very similar situation where someone wanted the love of their life that happened to be 10 at the time, and then they got a perfectly aged up version that will do everything they want and say. Doesn't that sound familiar? And it would kind of make sense, because the thing is, Ironside obviously cares about the idea of family to a degree. You can see that by how he deals with the loss of his wife and how dedicated he is to Deodra. But he also seems to take a lot of anger out on his other family members that he doesn't like. Like, if he doesn't get the confirmation or the conforming that he wants from said family member, he Vargheses them. Like, that was his pops. That was his dad, who just left because he didn't like what Arthur was doing. And you know what Ironside did? And then Varghese was not Varghese anymore. He was a gravestone. So it seems like Ironside's the kind of guy who likes regiment, likes order, likes obedience. So wouldn't it be nice if Arthur could just produce him the perfect son? You know, a son that would just do anything and everything he said and just be nice and cute. That's it. That's the thing. Deodra seems, at least personality-wise, too calm, too kind, too collected. Especially for someone who's presumably like 16 to, I don't know, let's say 20. Because once again, I still don't know what the whole timeline situation is with Deodra. Deodra's, he's up there, like, in terms of, like, weird stuff that's been introduced in Four Knights, and there's been a lot of weird stuff introduced in Four Knights. Yeah, I'm just not entirely sure. It's a very strange situation we're in with the son of Ironside. And speaking of, does he have magic? Like, how real is he? Once again, I keep going back to the real things. Let's just assume. Let's just lay it down and say, one way or another, Deodra is human enough that if push came to shove, he could box. What kind of magic would he inherit? Notably, we have no idea about how, like, hereditary the links are. We have people like Gilthunder who literally just have their father's magic. Like, straight up. I mean, technically not. Technically, they have different magics, but they just both have lightning magic. There are different names, and Zardros is a bit stronger, but that's it. That's all we got. But at the same time, you have characters like Hauser, and it didn't seem like his parents had wind powers. Either of them. Just didn't seem like it. So, humans inheriting powers from their parents is not necessarily consistent. Heck, look at Ironside's power and look at Percy's power. They're kind of similar, as in they both glow. But that's about it. We don't necessarily get much higher correlation. So can Deodra box at all? Is he physically too weak to box? Does he not have that dog in him? Presumably. He has that chimera in him. But that's the thing. And not only does he have any sort of magic, we don't know that, but also, with that being the case, if he did, when are we actually going to see him do anything? Because the thing is, right now, the whole story about Four Knights is focused on getting to Camelot. We have 3 separate groups now that are going to Camelot, and we're still with all those groups in this current arc, which will last who knows how long. So presumably, we're at least going to get 1 arc each, with every single individual group, from the Percy platoon plus Gawain, to the Tristan platoon, to Lance alone, and then we may get to Camelot. And that's a big, hefty, juicy May. So, what are we going to do with Diodra? Is he just going to be lingering for majority of the story? Because the thing is, Zeldris also kind of had that effect in the original Seven Deadly Sins. He was introduced, then he just kind of disappeared for a while. Like, he doesn't really do much until he shows up to the Ten Commandments fight. Then he just disappears for another large swath of the narrative, takes over Camelot, and vibes. That's about it. And he's there at the Escanor and Estarossa fight, but once again, he doesn't do much, if anything at all. So it's entirely possible that Deodra got introduced mad early, like literally pre-100s early, which is even earlier than when Zeldris was introduced, and he just ends up sitting around and doing nothing. Because he can't leave Camelot, right? Like, at least as far as we know. He can't leave Camelot, because he may or may not be real. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep checking in on him? What kind of connection are we going to build to him? What is going to happen with Deodra? And another thing is, if he isn't real, but Ironside can interact with him, he is a physical creature, what is he actually? Is he another captured fairy that was transmorphed into Deodra? Is he... this would be extremely dark, and I'm not sure Nakaba would do it. Like, the idea has been sitting in the back of my head for a while, but imagine that Deodra isn't actually Deodra, like a regular being. Imagine he's Chaos Deodra. Like, you know how Arthur has the ability to resurrect things, presumably through chaos. Imagine if Arthur revived the not alive baby that Ironside was holding into Chaos Deodra. The only reason I'm somewhat against that is because there's nothing that really implies it in his design, but then again, we only have 2 Chaos Resurrections to go off of, and they were drastically changed from their original designs because they were another species. But presumably Ironside and his wife are human, so there's no real reason for Arthur to alter their appearances. So, is he just like a resurrected baby that's been allowed to grow up in Camelot? And the reason he can't, but see, the reason I don't think that's the case either, I don't think he's actually like the resurrected baby, is once again, he can't leave. At least with Galland, his soul existed, and Melaskla just had to bring. Oh, Purgatory, I have an order for Galland the Great. And Purgatory was like, let's see, Galland the Lesser, Galland the Superior. Oh, Galland the Great, here, let me send him up to you. And she got the soul back, threw it in the helmet, and then bada bing, bada boom, bada bam, and we had Galland back. But Galland could exist in the real world just fine. In fact, going with the idea of what he said, at face value, he was stronger than ever before. So why is Deodra weak? Why is Deodra fragile? And notably, we don't have enough context about the fake Lancelot that Jericho got. Maybe he's physically weak too. I just don't know. Maybe not. I'm only throwing my shoulders up because I have no idea whether or not he's weak. But still, it seems strange. Deodra is in this really weird position on multiple fronts. On a character front, he just seems too perfect. On an origin front, he seems to conflict with the timeline a lot. On a biological nature front, he seems very physically weak, despite his brother being very physically strong. Overall, what he really is, if he's real or not, he's a mystery. And I think that's very, very interesting, right? Because the thing is, as much as I love Zeldris, from the moment he was introduced, you kind of knew his whole deal. Or at least in terms of like just general existence stuff. Like, Mel's a demon, so he's a demon. He's strong. Mel is strong, he's going to be strong. Mel's a fighter, they're a fighter. Like, it's not necessarily overly complicated when you look at Zelda. Even going way back when, to when I was first reading Seven Deadly Sins, I think I kind of had, like, the general plot structure for Zelda planned out, or had the general guess of it from the moment of his introduction. Can I say that for certain? No, I'd have to go back, like, years ago and ask my past self, and I'm not sure what they would say, because I actually don't think I paid much attention to Zelda initially. I was much more interested in Estarossa because he literally just looked like an older Meliodas. But with that being the case, Diodra is once again kind of slotting into Nakaba's whole I'll do something similar but different mindset that he's been running for pretty much all of Four Knights so far. If you look at the original series and you look at Four Knights, there are a lot of things that kind of overlap, but they're twisted into new and interesting ways. Oh yeah, we'll have a major antagonist introduced rather early on. But that major antagonist may also be the final villain. We will have a titular group of knights that are going to be our main cast. But we're taking away 3 of them, and we're making them all destroyers of worlds. Instead of protectors of worlds. They are literally the Four Knights of the Apocalypse. It's the same, but different. There shall be a goddess, a demon, a fairy, a human, and an external, I don't know. There will be a combination of the races in this one knight group. However, they'll be mostly human and different than before. There shall be a sunshine user in this group of knights. However, they shall be completely different from the previous sunshine user. There's a whole ton of Nakaba taking old concepts that he's already had and like snapping ankles, breaking them, shattering them, absolutely causing them to detonate and fracture all over the place in terms of what he does with them. And I think Deodra is the same case. We have multiple sibling relationships in original Seven Deadly Sins. They just do exist. They are present. They are real. They are impossible to ignore. They are everywhere. From the main characters to the side characters to the literal background characters, everyone has a brother, sister, something of some kind. But the way Nakaba wrote them was very, I guess simple is the wrong word. I'm not saying Zelda is like a simple character. Bro's been through a lot, but he isn't necessarily all that mysterious. Even as soon as his introduction, he's a little bit obvious. But with Diodra, with the introduction to our brother, to the new main character, he's just as mysterious as Percival is. Like, notably, we know a lot about Percival, but we don't actually. we have a general idea of Percival and his background and his history, but like, he is still a walking, talking enigma that happens to not be hiding anything at all, according to Anne's very magical power. So the two brothers being extremely mysterious is something that I feel like Nakaba's doing on purpose. Like, sometimes I look at certain things that Nakaba does and I'm like, oh, this was purely accidental. Like, I look at the Fairy Kings, and I don't think he actually meant to make them as cool as he did. I think that was purely accidental. But at times, I feel like certain things are purposeful. Nakaba's definitely the kind of guy who will go out of his way to make certain things confusing if he wants to. Seven Deadly Sins is not too complicated of a series. Neither is Four Knights. On a basic level, you can hand the series to anybody, and they can read it just fine. However, when Nakaba feels like getting mysterious, when he feels like being obtuse and like poking you and just like, hey, something's up here, something's strange, don't be shocked if something happens later. Yeah, he's definitely that kind of guy. Like, once again, I bring up Merlin because it's one of the most recent examples next to Deodra himself. Merlin not being real is something that was so heavily hinted that we were talking about it for months. Like, legitimately, ever since the series started serializing and we saw Merlin, we were out the clutch being like, something's weird, something's awesome, strange, and look what happened. So I can definitely tell the weirdness surrounding Deodra, his history, his past, his character, his validity, his actual existence. All of this is purposefully obtuse. It is purposely Nakaba going out of his way, stroking his beard and being like, yeah, I cannot wait. Like, he's twirling his mustache being like, oh, I'm cooking something good. And I can definitely see it, especially with the way he's not just building Diodra, strangely, but he's building Camelot, Arthur, Chaos, everything in this melting pot that composes Deodra and his history and his past and what may or may not be his future. All of it feels so purposefully obtuse, mysterious, out there, and strange. So I personally can definitely see Diodra being a really interesting character to tackle further down the line. On getting clarification on everything, getting an understanding of it, what he's going to do interacting with other characters. Unfortunately, Varghese is gone, so that's one major character that would probably have a very drastic reaction to Diodra that is simply not going to exist. But we still have Ironside, and we definitely still have Percy. So I think Deodra's going to be cooking. He's going to be cooking for a while, though. I don't see us interacting with him for a long time. Like, I think we got this little glimpse of him to get us thinking about him, but I highly doubt we're going to see him for a while. Like, at least not interacting with our main cast. Like, we may get glimpses of him here and there, like whenever Ironside reports back to Camelot, or maybe Pelgard will come visit him or something like that. But in reality, I don't think we're actually going to see him interacting with our cast for at least another, like, 100 chapters at a bare minimum. And we haven't even gotten to the first 100 chapters, so we do have a while. However, that's what I think. Please let me know what you guys think about Diodra in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. You support as low as $1 down links to videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off.